Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome to the Elevate Your Soul podcast. Today, I'm interviewing Alyssa Grace, a 10th generation psychic, and we are going to talk about ghosts and spirits and psychic abilities and all of that fun stuff. Alyssa's main goal in life is to help as many people as she can to help connect them with their loved ones who have passed on and to create peace and clarity with the gift she's been given. And we are doing that by making this podcast. So I hope you guys love this episode and learn a lot from it. And just remember to be open-minded and to have an open mind when listening to this podcast episode. If you want to get in touch with Alyssa or want a reading yourself, I have put her contact details in the show notes and you can get in touch with her there. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hello, Alyssa. Welcome to the Elevate Your Soul podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. First question I have for you is, what elevates your soul?
Honestly, just everything in general. And I know that's such a big spectrum, but just energy from objects, places, people, things, living, not living, just all over. It's a big passion of mine, and it's just something that it kind of puts a fire in my soul, and it just takes off from there.
Yeah, so I love that. Just being alive, right? Life is so cool itself.
I love living.
Yeah, I love it.
It's a huge thing for me. I love living.
All right, so today's topic is I see dead people. Can you define for us what dead people is? What does that mean?
To define dead people, I honestly think that's such a wide spectrum, because you have the living, and everybody's individuality, your personality, my personality is totally different.
Yeah.
Just like it is when somebody's passed on. Your personality takes over because it's your soul. Your soul has its own individuality when it's passed on. So you have these different personalities, the way they dress, the way they think, the way they look, the way they act. It's the same way in death as it is living. And then not only that, it's, do they want to be seen? Do they want to be heard? Do they want to be, all the above? Do they want you to be able to talk to them like we are now?
Right.
So it just depends. Or if they want to be a shadow person, it's such a wide spectrum. So I don't think there's one specific way to define a dead person, because it can be all over.
Right. So when someone passes, do they then get to decide if you just use the word shadow? I don't know what that means, but can someone decide once they die if they want to be a spirit or stick around?
I think
for a
so.
while?
I think so. From what my past experience with doing readings is, some spirits want to stay behind, and some of them are at peace. And everybody, I can't say, because I'm Christian too, and I don't know if you religious preference or anything, or anybody listening to this, but going from heaven and hell and stuff, I haven't been able to see what heaven and hell is. I think it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
But I can feel the presence, and somebody that that's passed on, if they're at peace and they're loving and they're calm, I feel like that's their form of heaven, whether it's their form of heaven is in Florida in the afterlife or on another dimension. I've seen other psychics talk about this too. And it's the best way to put it is, we're here and they're on another dimension. They're on another world. And it's just kind of like they're living on a different wavelength.
Yeah.
That's the best way to put it. Yeah. Yeah. It's exactly. Their vibration's a lot higher than, you have the 3Ds, 5Ds, 7Ds, whatever. I mean, it just keeps going, and their energy is pretty high up there.
Wow.
So it's different. It's different.
That's crazy that certain people can tap in and tune into that frequency.
It is. It can be overwhelming at times too.
Totally.
It really can.
Totally. I can imagine that. I'm a little bit jealous. I think it's so cool. I've always been fascinated with this stuff. But when I was younger, I did have my own experience with seeing spirits, and I didn't necessarily see people, but I would see shadows, and I would definitely hear voices and things being moved around.
Yeah.
So I had my experience, but they were like all like from the age 5 till 12. And then it kind of disappeared. And I'm like so hoping that it'll come back. Is that common that people have that?
It can be. I mean, everybody has a certain degree of intuitiveness. I believe everybody is an empath. I don't agree that everybody can be a medium, but I do think that people can connect to people that have passed on at certain points in their lifetime. Right. It's very common. A lot of people get afraid of it and they're like, I don't know, am I losing my mind? Yeah. It's more common than you think, especially when you're younger, because your mind is so open to everything. And as we get older, our mind closes to, oh, there's no way. Like we start rationalizing things, and just trying to figure out or trying to just make a sense of one thing. And you can't do that. Not with spirituality. You have to be very open-minded when it comes to communicating with the spirit. And if you don't, then it just kind of like closes that door. Totally. So
interesting. So for people who are like, don't believe in ghosts and spirits, they're less likely to see or hear anything.
They can be, yeah. And it can be overwhelming for them at first too. Yeah. I used to actually be a skeptic. Growing up in a Christian household, my father's side was, Christian, but my mom's side was 10 generations of psychics and mediums, Reiki masters and healers and stuff like that. And so when I reconnected with that side of my family, I had things happening to me since I was little, but I always thought it was normal when it wasn't. And going from there and trying to just tap into it and understand it, at first it just got really overwhelming. And being able to understand that it is normal, but on the wavelength that I do it, it's not normal. And not a lot of people do that. And it took a lot to understand that.
Were you always psychic? Like, were you always able to hear or see spirits your whole life?
Since I was 3 years old, yeah.
Wow.
I was really little.
You haven't lost it.
No, I did suppress it for a long time, but suppressing for me was kind of like not opening that channel, that energy to be exchanged. But I thought it was anxiety, and there was points where I couldn't even go to the store. I remember one time when it was kind of like my abilities were opening up and it was like, hey, you can't ignore me anymore. Yeah. And it got to the point where, I couldn't even go to the store and buy toilet paper. I had to drive 45 minutes out to this small, I grew up in Indiana, this small Dollar Tree, Dollar General. It's different. I went out to this Dollar General just to get it so I didn't have to deal with people during Christmas. I mean, Christmas crazy in general, but for me, I was too overwhelmed with my senses. Wow. And it was a lot. It was a lot.
So I'm guessing the answer is you don't like tune into a different frequency and then you start hearing and seeing spirits. It's kind of like involuntary, like randomly you'll, and do you
yes and no. So yes and no. Like when I first started, like actually understanding what I was doing, it was very involuntarily. Like it would happen at any moment. I'd be shopping, I'd be in the bathroom, I'd be in public. Like, I mean, it didn't matter. I'd be in the shower and there's like spirits and energies coming through. Wow. And I had to kind of like put a boundary up with spirits and like, hey, you can't do this, you can't overstep. And I felt crazy at first because I was trying to establish something. And if you look at me from an outside perspective, I looked like I was shouting at myself, talking to myself, looking, crazy. Yeah. But it was to take back my control, because when a spirit knows that somebody can see or hear them or feel them, or some of us, psychic mediums can have one sense over the other or both or all three. It just depends. And I have all three. They get super excited. It's like being in a small world. And then you have loved ones you want to connect with, and they're like, oh my God, Alyssa, like, can you just talk to this person for me? Can you? And it's like an impulsive thought. Like it just doesn't go away until they communicate what they need to. Wow. And that can get really overwhelming for somebody that doesn't know what's going on. My Nana, my grandmother, she helped me a lot understand how to ground myself in that process, because I think I could have gotten through it, but understanding that I wasn't alone was the huge thing, because when I first developed, I guess, understanding that these are abilities, I felt really alone, and I was kind of like, why? I questioned a lot of things at that moment, and I couldn't understand why. I was very skeptic. I actually didn't believe in psychics and mediums growing up at all.
Wow.
And to now understand that I've always been one, kind of like does a flip on me a little bit. So it's
Wow,
a lot.
that's such an incredible story. Wow, like my heart is just like, I'm so connecting with what you're saying. That's crazy. So is it quite common that it actually runs through the family? I think that's incredible.
What I've noticed is like a lot of females in families, females usually are the dominant one. I've done a lot of research and reading too, trying to understand like how it's gone on, as long as it is, and it can be genetic. It is on my dad's side, what I found out, 5 generations, but my mom's side is the more dominant, and it's female to female to female. Like,
Wow.
my sister, my mom, and my niece, who's 3 years old, is communicating with ones that have passed on. And she communicated, I think my mom said it was our great aunt, or her great aunt.
Yeah.
And she was shopping, and my niece was bringing up all these things, and it was things there's no way, she's 3 years old, she wouldn't have known. She was saying the name and everything, and I just told my mom, I was like, she's a little medium.
Oh, that's so
She's 3 years old.
That's amazing.
So,
and you see kids sometimes do that. They'll like turn over and talk to
yeah,
no one, and like the parents automatically.
she has imaginary friends too, and I'll ask her, and I'm looking around, I'm like, no one's here. She's like, no, rainbow hair, and I'm like, okay. But sometimes their energy is a lot more higher than ours.
Yeah.
So they could see something that even I can't, like even as a medium. So it just depends.
Wow.
What wants to be seen. So
do you ever have like a spirit come in and give you messages, not only for other people, but for yourself? Like any warning signs or like.
That's more of my guides for warnings.
Okay.
So more of guides, angels and stuff like that for warnings if something's going to happen. I'll get like this feeling, like kind of like a deja vu. I usually get premonitions personally, or dreams that have happened. I've noticed a lot of my dreams are world events, big events, or like tragic events, which is really morbid to deal with, but that's what those come through. But the other thing you said, keep zoning out. And that happens a lot too when I'm talking to people and I raise my frequency. Like I'll start going all over a little bit, and I'm like,
that's fine.
But yeah.
That's interesting. No, I was just wondering about the messages. Like, so do any spirits ever come in and say like, hey, Alyssa, like,
yeah, they can
do this, or, you know,
they can. It just depends. Like I said, that could be
can you
more
see
your
or
guide.
actually physically hear your guides? Because I feel for me, my spirit guides are my
I hear them.
Yeah. Okay. So for
mine
me,
are very demanding, and because I'm very stubborn and bullheaded, and most of the time when they communicate with me, they're kind of like a stern parrot, throwing it down like it's a man and a woman. I don't know their names. Some people know their names of their personal guides. For me, I don't know their names. I think I know one, but the other one, I think it's more of my grandfather that's passed on.
Yeah.
But they tend to show up when I really need them to, and I'm pretty in tune with myself as is. But.
And when you say you hear them, do you like actually hear them, or is it just your own voice of your own thought in your head?
There's a difference. So you have your consciousness, which is a thought, and you either have a voice of some sort that's familiar to you as your consciousness. For me, my consciousness is an old man. It sounds really weird, but it is. Okay. But when my guides come in, it's not mine. It's not familiar to me. It's like an acquaintance of some sort, but it's not my own. Right. And that's when I know my guides are stepping in, like, hey, you need to do this. There's been times where, in the past I had a car accident all day. I was like, man, I was like, I feel like there's going to be an accident today. And I just kept feeling like, be cautious, watch your surroundings. There's going to be an accident of some sort. And then, hours later, I'm in the car accident. So, and it doesn't feel like it's going to be me. It's kind of like my energy and my adrenaline and all that, like, kind of separates itself to protect me. But it's just like, okay, so it's a little bit different. It's got a different voice, different tone to it.
Yeah. And are you able to talk back to any spirits that you see?
I do a lot. I'm more vocal, or I'll speak with them through consciousness. That's usually what I do the most.
Yeah.
When I communicate with the spirit, or depending on if they're vocal, verbal, or anything like that, or they'll show images. Just depends on how they're wanting to communicate as well.
Yes.
So.
And are spirits able to move physical objects? Like, are they able to turn on and off lights or move things
They
around?
can. If their energy is high enough, they can. If they're really trying to get a message across, they can be. Not all the times are they negative or dark. Some people get freaked out when the lights start flickering and stuff. It's just their energy is so high up there. And you have to understand, too, is how long have they been trying to communicate with somebody to get this message across? That energy can just build up and build up and build up. And then you're sitting here and seeing your lights flickering and stuff. I have it happen to me all the time. I'll walk in a room and I'm like, cut it out. Like yesterday, I was walking around my house and my doors kept opening and shutting. Wow. And I literally yelled out. I was like, can you please stop? Like, I'm trying to read. I'm trying to, meditate and do my thing. Yeah. I'm like, I don't have time for this. Like, you're opening the door. My dogs are going to get out. Like, not right now. If you want me to communicate, if it's important, then come to me. If not, leave me alone. Yeah. And the door stopped opening. I mean, there was no windows. There was no breeze. There was nothing. Yeah. And they stopped.
So interesting. So I had the light turn on. I had that experience. I've had like the tap turn on and off.
The radio too is usually the big one.
Okay. And is it always at them? They're just wanting to give a message. They're not like actually there to like try to freak you out or anything. They're actually trying to freak you.
Most of the time, no, but there is times where they can start messing with things like that in a sense. But I don't really want to put fear out there when it comes to that, because it's just what I've noticed, because I've worked with negative energies and positive ones. Yeah. And with the more negative, demonic of some sort, they have like this jokester energy, kind of like, I'm going to play a game and we're going to have fun. And it just kind of feels like childlike, the best way to put it. Is if it feels more childlike, then that's something you kind of need to be concerned of. But it's not where they're going to be sinister. Like, things can happen, but as long as you protect yourself and you cleanse and do all of that, you'll be fine. A lot of people get really freaked out, and I've worked on people that have had, there was one incident, a client of mine had a bed from a slave from the 1800s. That was really intense. I had another client that lived on a house that had over 50 family members that were buried there, and there was a lot of dark history behind it. Wow. Another one that was in a Confederate state where it was on a war ground where all soldiers were buried. Yeah. I usually see a lot of that more in towards the red states and stuff like that. So yeah, it just depends. Higher frequency energies and where a lot of losses happen.
Wow, that is crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. So you do readings as well then? Like, have you had spirits come in and say like, give this message to my daughter or whatever, of someone who's passed?
I've had spirits come through where sometimes even the message isn't for the person that I'm doing the reading with, where it's supposed to be given to the person that they interacted with briefly at work. So, and they're like, are you serious? Like, I literally paid and whatever. And I'm like, I can't control spirit. I can tell you that it can come through. And a lot of times when I do mediumship and stuff like that, I make sure that I can have a connection before people pay for readings. I just want to make sure that the energy is genuine. Totally. And when that happened, it's happened a couple times, not all the time, but it does happen. Yeah. They're like, oh yeah, my boss's, sister's name is Sue or whatever. And it'll be, their sister coming through. So, and just be like, hey, can you tell them so-and-so? just depends.
Wow.
I can't guarantee how spirit will come through or when, or
Exactly.
it's just whenever they decide to. It's all them. I think they're, the best way to put it is like they're in human form, but on the other side.
Okay.
So it's the
Okay.
best way to understand it.
Interesting. And have you ever given someone like a message or a mini psychic reading in public, like standing next to someone? You're like, oh, your dad wants me to tell you or something.
I'm very, so I've actually just started recently coming out of my comfort zone. It's so funny because like on my online, I'm very extrovert, but in person, I'm very introvert.
Yeah.
Like for me, for the longest time, I had to hide who I was and understand. And for me, I had to understand that this isn't just I used to call it a blessing and a curse, but in reality, it's just nothing but a blessing. And so recently, I actually just started doing, I went and worked at a psychic shop, a metaphysical shop, and I started doing readings there. And then I got out of my comfort zone in person, and they went really, really well. People I'd never met, they were really blown away. And now I'm doing group readings and building that, and I'm going to start traveling and doing group readings in different areas, different states, and that's kind of like where I'm planning on going, kind of just getting my name out there and doing as much as I can.
Wow.
To
I
help.
support you all the way.
Thank you.
Want New Zealand and Auckland, we'll set up a group for you.
I'm totally down for that. I have always wanted to go out that way. I just haven't yet.
Totally. One other thing that I was going to ask before, and it slipped my mind, was when you're in a house and there are spirits around and people are seeing or hearing things and they feel really uncomfortable, what can you do to cleanse the energy of that house? Like, is there any way to get rid of spirits or?
Sometimes it depends. Like I just did a home cleansing actually for somebody. And when I did this one, the spirit was stubborn because their heaven, their peace was in this person's home. They didn't want to leave. They didn't bother them. They didn't hurt them. They just were draining them. And I cleansed the home in a sense. There's sometimes if you have antiques, I've learned they love to cling on because of the old energy that's on them. Getting rid of those, putting those aside, or even in a garage or something like that does help. But I've had times where spirits are adamant, like, I don't want to leave, I don't want to leave. And you have to let them know, like, look, you need to respect their boundaries if you're not ready to cross over, or you need to kind of figure out how to mediate this, or it's time. I don't usually rush spirits in a sense. Some psychics are like, yeah, I'm going to ask them to cross over, but sometimes spirit isn't ready for that.
Right.
And for me, I respect that in a sense because, like I said, I look at them as human form. They're just a person. They're another soul. Yeah. And sometimes they still have some things that are needed. Maybe I'm not the person that's going to get that message out there for them. Maybe they need to contact somebody else to be able to finish what they need to do.
Yes.
So.
And what do you mean by crossover? What does that mean?
Go over to where they need to go, like whether it's their heaven or whether or not they have unfinished business. But usually when it's more of a negative energy, somebody that's committed murder, anything like that, they go pretty quick unless there's forgiveness that they need from somebody, or to make peace with somebody, or to ask forgiveness. It just depends. But most of the time they cross over in a sense to where they need to go, wherever that is. I don't think that's
yeah. And do you know why some spirits stick around? So some people like can just die and
they just like to hang out. They really do. They love living. They love seeing people. It's kind of like, the best way I can put it from what I've seen is kind of like looking in a glass bubble, being able to see everybody and everything, and then you can just hang out and just see how the world's reacting today. And you're not really there, but you're just so at peace too. From what I felt is like a lot of them are at peace, but they're hanging out. Yeah. So I think we all wish to have that too, and just even in the real world. So
yeah, that's amazing. That's incredible. How can people get in touch with you if they want a psychic reading from you?
So I have a Facebook page. It's Psychic Medium Alyssa Grace on there, or you can add me on my social media page, which is Alyssa Bowen. Or I always tell people the easiest way to get a hold of me is text me with my phone number. And it's, I don't know if I should put that on a YouTube video.
It's up to you. I can add the links for your Facebook pages in the show notes.
Okay.
for people?
My phone number that people can reach out to me is 765-228-6033, and they can send me a text if they're not comfortable with calling, if they're a little bit
Area
weary.
code's 1, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think I'm on WhatsApp too under that number. So if they're overseas or anything like that, they can find me on there. I have a lot of Canadian and Australian clients and some England as well.
Beautiful.
So.
And possibly some New Zealand clients now.
I know.
That is so cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you want to say that I haven't asked you about yet today?
Honestly, I know right now a lot of people are like kind of like stepping into their own gifts and their abilities and awakening and trying to understand and feeling overwhelmed. Yeah. The best thing I can do is listen to yourself, trust yourself, and understand that you have your subconsciousness and you have your conscious mind. Once you understand how to be at peace with what's going on the subconsciousness and being able to control that, you'll be able to understand more the abilities that are coming into play. A lot of people are going through psychic abilities right now, and it's there's a lot happening. Yeah. And people are scared because it's different. And it's completely normal. It's okay. Yeah. I don't want people to feel alone, and that's why I try to spread my message as much as I can, because during the moment when I did, if I didn't have my Nana, like I don't know what I would have done. I would have probably shut it out, and it made me physically sick if I did, and it can affect your health, so mental or physical. So just
Do you find, just one other question I thought of, do you find that people with psychic abilities are usually more inclined to be empaths and like really sensitive to energies?
So what my definition, how I feel psychic is, a psychic is a highly intuitive empath. So it's like an empath, but you're more in tune with your empathetic abilities. So being able to feel things and hear things, and just your senses are more heightened. Yeah. And that's what I feel like a psychic is. I mean, I think anybody can be a psychic. It's just a matter of how in tune you are. Yeah. It just depends on, it really just depends on that.
Yeah. Incredible. I love it. So much good information in there. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you so much. And yeah, I'll put those links in the show notes. So if anyone wants to find you or your work, they will be there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
You're welcome. You too.
Hey YouTube fam, if you like this video, make sure to hit the like button below. And if you think a friend, a family member, or just someone you know who could benefit from this podcast episode, please share this video with them. And if you've been enjoying the Elevate Your Soul podcast, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel for new episodes weekly.